Aunt Pearl jumped up. Your face, Alfred! It's all... You're limping! Looks worse than it is, he said. Here, sit down. Want something to eat? Just some milk. She poured him a glass of milk and set it on the table in front of him. She sat down and watched him drink it. Want some more? No thanks. Want some aspirin or... I took some already. Doctor gave it to me. I'll get your bed ready. He played with the glass. Thought you'd have a million questions. So you could tell me all about some stone fence off of Lennox? Big dog jumped up, right honey? The split in his lip opened again when he smiled. Yeah. I had to find out you have a boxing match from Mr. Epstein. Thought you might try and stop me. You're getting to be a man, Alfred. I stop you from one thing, you'll do something else. You said you didn't like me boxing. I still don't. Seems an awful shame. Two men got nothing against each other to go in and try to beat each other's head. I don't know about something else. For the summer, you didn't know about boxing neither. I guess I'll have some more milk. She leaned over his shoulder and filled his glass. When I was 17, Alfred. Don't look at me like that. I was 17 too. A man came by the house. He was from the Apollo Theater. Said he heard me singing in church choir. Wanted to sign me up for a stage show. No star part, you understand. I'd be in a chorus. Wear a fancy dress. They'd teach me some dance steps. She walked around the table holding the milk container with two hands. Was we ever excited? Me and Dorothy and Ernestine, your mama. Couldn't sign a contract because I was underage, and my mama, your grandma, wouldn't sign for me. She said that stage shows were sinful. Be shameful when her daddy's strutting around showing off. On that, no good. She sat down, her fingers tightening on the container. How I talked with her, and I cried. Dorothy and Ernestine, they begged her too. The more we begged, the harder she set her face. Sinful, shameful, no good. You never told me about that. No secret. You just always been so closed into yourself, Alfred. What happened? Nothing. The man went away. I met your Uncle John, and we went together a long time before my mama would give her blessing. She said she didn't have enough money in the bank. How that man worked. Night and day he worked. We got married, and he got sick soon after Charlene came along. He never did get to see the twins. Passed on a month before they came. Her hands tightened and twisted on the container. The milk spurted out onto her lap. Alfred came around the table and put his hands on Aunt Pearl's shoulders. He would have been real pleased with them. Nice girls, he said softly. She was sobbing. I don't say what I would have been the star or nothing. I don't know what I'm saying. But you would have liked to cry. Try, said Alfred. Yes. He held her shoulders until he stopped heaving. Thanks, Alfred. You're a comfort. She wiped her eyes and looked up into his. I didn't even ask if you won your fight. I won it. She reached up and stroked his face. I didn't even taste sweet. The winning did it, honey. No. You gonna quit this thing now? No.
I walk a lonely road, the only one that I have ever known. Don't know where it goes, but it's home to me and I walk alone.
Chapter 16. Griffin was light and fast. His gloves were a red blur tapping away at Alfred's face, easy and steady as the rain on a roof. Pitter-pat, pitter-pat. Alfred's eyes began to swell and his nose was clogged with dried blood. Donatelli and Henry and Bud were screaming, "Rush him! Press! Press!" But every time he fired out his job, Griffin brushed it aside. By the end of the first round, his face felt as if it had been stung by 100 bees. "Attack! Attack! 2 hands!" said Donatelli in his ear, and Bud slapped an ice bag around his face. Henry kneaded the muscles of his back. "Go after him, Alfred!" He tried to explain to the ice bag about the red blur and Griffin's speed, but the bell rang. It started again, pitter-patter, pitter-patter, and somebody in the crowd was laughing. He swung wildly, a foot over Griffin's head, and the red blur was back, tapping away at his chin, his eyes, his mouth, his nose. He tried to remember his combinations. Left, left, cross, hook, but Griffin's skinny arms knocked his punches away. And then the blur again. Pitter pat, until he was sure that Griffin had 3, maybe 5 hands at work. All needles and pins, stabbing at the bee bites. The bell rang. "This is it," said Henry, tilting the water back. "Go for the KO. Only chance to win. Knock his head off." Pitter pat. Not quite so fast now. There were only 2 red gloves, and sometimes he could see them before they tapped against his face. Griffin was breathing hard. He's tired, Alfred thought. Tired from hitting me so much. 1 red glove grazed his ear. First time Griffin missed all night. "Rush him! Rush him!" they screamed from the corner. Somewhere, Alfred found a little extra strength. He reached all the way down for it, and the next time the red glove missed, he threw his weight behind a short right uppercut. Griffin stopped cold, a pink blotch on his chest. Alfred swung the hook, everything behind the hook. It slammed into Griffin's jaw. Thunk! Pain shot up Alfred's wrist and exploded in his shoulder. Griffin went down and flopped over like a rag doll. Griffin twitched once and then lay very still on the canvas. 9, 10. Winner by knockouts! Bud and Donatelli were holding his arms and Henry was hugging him, but he felt alone and sick. He swallowed back the bitter taste, broke free, and ran across the ring. "Where are you going?" asked the referee, blocking him. "I want to see him." "Later. Next bout's coming right in." "Now," said Alfred, dodging around the referee. Griffin was being pulled to his feet. "You okay?" "Huh?" "I'm sorry I hit you so..." "Forget it, kid," said one of Griffin's handlers. "Lucky punch." "Come on, Alfred." Donatelli's fingers were on his arm, pulling him back across the ring. Alfred kept looking over his shoulder as they slapped Griffin awake and helped him down the ring steps. All the way up the aisle, people stood up and shook their fists and tugged at his robe and cheered. He kept his eyes straight ahead and his mouth tightly closed. He was afraid he might throw up. "Let's look at those eyes," said Donatelli, pushing him down on the dressing room bench. "Just swollen," said Bud, pressing the ice bag against him. "No damage." "Beautiful hook," said Henry. "Was that ever a beautiful hook?" "He just lay there," said Alfred. "That's part of it," said Donatelli. "Like a dead man." "It happened, Alfred." Bud took the ice bag away and looked at Donatelli. They stared at each other for a long time before Bud shook his head and Donatelli shrugged. The sound of the hook against Griffin's jaw, a dull, meaty bunk, echoed in his mind all the way home in Spoon's car. He heard in the kitchen, trying to sleep, trying not to see the rag doll flop endlessly into the canvas. He didn't sleep. He left the apartment early before Aunt Pearl woke up. He didn't want to talk about it over breakfast. He walked to the park, careful to avoid the 2 policemen. But there's no way to avoid Lou Epstein when he finally went to work. 2 wins in a row, Alfred! "Yeah. You don't look so good." "You got the day off?" "No. I'm alright." There were only a few customers that morning. It's hard to concentrate. His fingers were stiff on the cash register keys, and every time he looked up, Griffin was flopping off a shelf of canned goods. Thunk! Lucky punch. Beautiful hook. Pitter pat. No sale. Pop, pop, pop. And there was Rivera, and the crowd was screaming, "Get in there and fight, black boy, coward!" Twice, he rang up wrong totals and had to call Jake over to unlock the register and correct the receipt roll. All the hate was out in the crowd, he thought, screaming for blood, for a knockout. The crowd didn't really care who flopped over like a ragdoll. Griffin, Rivera, Brooks, anybody. "Go on, Alfred, take the rest of the day off." "I'm alright, Mr. Epstein." "Argue I don't, Alfred. You're fired until tomorrow morning." 8:30. He felt a little better on the street. A brisk November wind tugged at his jacket, and he pulled his cap over his forehead. It was nearly noon, but the sun was neither warm nor bright. The few people on the street were moving quickly. Across the street, in front of the school gate, 2 heavily dressed figures were handing out leaflets. One of them waved. "Brooksy! Hey, Brooksy! Over here!" He shoved his hands in his jacket pockets and strolled over. Harold was smiling. His eyes were friendly behind the horn-rimmed glasses. Lynn seemed very small and slim. bundled into a tweed coat. "Hi, Alfred," she said. "We were just talking about you." "How's that?" She handed him a leaflet. "Harold was saying how much he'd like to get you involved in our new recreation program." "That's right," said Harold. "The kids would really look up to a boxer."
Oh, really?
"We had 2 fights. That doesn't matter. At least you've done something." "Don't have much time now." "Think about it anyway," said Lynn. A bell rang inside the school. "I will," said Alfred. But Harold and Lynn had already turned and began handing their leaflets to the children streaming out into the streets. He walked on, surrounded by skipping, laughing children. He thought of Rick, the white college boy he and James hadn't liked so much. Alfred half closed his eyes. "Okay, you little kids. I'm gonna do some push-up and trunk twisters. Then James here is gonna tell you some funny stories." But James was trembling in the clubroom corner, ripping open his heroin bag, and the crowd was screaming for him to kill Riviera. And Griffin was flopping over like a rag doll. It was too early to go to the gym, and he didn't feel like watching afternoon television. He dropped Lynn's leaflet into a trash barrel and headed towards 125th Street in a warm movie.
I was a little boy with a toy gun. Never really wanted to be number 1.
Chapter 17. Uncle Wilson waved his drumstick. 2 in a row. Now that's progress. Real progress. "When's your next fight?" asked Jeff. "In a week," said Alfred. "And another one in a week before Christmas." "You don't tell me nothing anymore," said Aunt Pearl. "You worry so much," said Alfred. "Now she's got every right to worry," said Aunt Dorothy. "Every day I read in the papers about—" "Can't hold my boy back," said Wilson. "Top fighter can make contracts with big people, get opportunities." The room was warm with the 9 of them around the table and heat still rising from the turkey, the sweet potatoes, the small mountains of stuffing, and green beans. Alfred felt good. Best Thanksgiving ever, he thought. Everybody was so easy and pleasant. Even Wilson. And Jeff was alright. None of those slick, smart, neat college ways he had expected. Lightly, he punched Jeff's arm. "You gotta come up to the gym. Make a light heavy out of you." "I tried it. We had a boxing club in college." "You been boxing?"
Busted.
Wilson's drumstick came down in a mound of cranberry sauce. "Get your brains scrambled? Waste all that? Wilson!" Dorothy pointed at the cranberry stains on his white shirt. The four girls giggled through its stuffed mouths, and Pearl raised her napkin to cover a smile. "Didn't last very long," said Jeff. "Be glad to show you a few things," said Alfred. "You forget about that," said Wilson, getting up. He stamped into the kitchen. "I like to handle myself better," said Jeff. "For Africa?" asked Alfred. "For anything." "I hear you talking about Africa?" Wilson came back into the dining room, dabbing at his shirt with a damp towel. "You got accepted and didn't tell me?" "I haven't sent in the application." "You better get on with it, boy! Even with your qualifications, you can't wait till the last minute." "I'm not sure I want to go." "Fine with me," said Dorothy. "I'll read how they got some tribes running loose over there and—" "Thought you had your mind set," said Wilson. "I've been thinking," said Jeff. "All I really wanted to do was see Africa. Now, if I really want to do something positive, I can do it right here, in this country." Didn't bring you up to be no street worker," said Wilson. "You got the chance to go on out and... Okay, let's say I go to Africa. Then what? Get a job with a big corporation that hires 1 Negro a year to look good and... Don't you shout at me, Jeff! I know what's best for... Now, you're shouting, Wilson, said Dorothy. That boy just doesn't understand about... Maybe you don't understand, said Jeff. "Can we go upstairs?" asked Diane. Please, said the twins. "Go on," said Dorothy. The girls jumped off their chairs and clattered away. "You men go on inside and behave. No more shouting. Pearl and I gotta clean up the table." We'll call you back for dessert. Wilson wandered away after his pipe, and Alfred and Jeff went into the front room. They sprawled out on the couch. Jeff wasn't quite so big as Alfred had remembered. Looks a little like Spoon without a broken nose, he thought. Are you going to turn professional? Said Jeff. Don't know. Do you really like the box? Well, I don't mean to be personal. You're my cousin. If you can't be personal, I suppose you wouldn't be doing it if you didn't like it. I like it alright, especially the running and the workouts. I like the guys at the gym, but sometimes in the ring, not so sure. Wilson came in the front room, puffing out clouds of pipe smoke. How are you doing at the store, Alfred? Fine. Look real nice to me. Might be thinking about some supermarkets, more money, good benefits, good for advancement. Not sure I want to work in a store all my life. People are always gonna need food, Alfred, said Wilson, pointing his pipe stem. Can't go wrong working in food. Sounds like Jelly Belly, said Alfred. Jelly Belly? Asked Jeff. Friend of mine at the gym. His real name is Horace Marshall Davenport Jr. But he's so fat, everybody just calls him Jelly Belly. Told me once he'd worked at Epstein's for free if he could eat on the job. Jeff laughed, but Wilson shook his head. That's the kind of foolishness that gets you nowhere. You got to show them you... Come on in, said Dorothy. There was ice cream and cake and milk and coffee on the table. Wilson sat down and watched his pipe go out. Always gotta be planning for the future, thinking ahead. Wake up one morning and you find the world passed you by. He looked straight at Jeff. Right, Alfred? Alfred leaned back in his chair. I've been thinking. I'm gonna continue my education. Remember what I had said about trade schools? Finish up high school at night, said Alfred. You can tell me about that, said Aunt Pearl. When did you decide that? Sometime now. Spoon says more you know, the more you want to know. Spoon? Asked Jeff. Alfred's school teacher friend, said Aunt Pearl. They finished their dessert quietly and watched Wilson clean and refill his pipe. He lit it and puffed out 2 clouds of smoke. He shook his head. Sometimes I'm not sure I understand this new generation. They got to find their own way, said Aunt Pearl. Same as we did. Times are really a-changin', said Wilson. Men like you started the changing, said Dorothy. Now it's their turn. Could do without you, Dad, said Jeff. Maybe so, said Wilson, leaning back. Smoke clouds rose, slowly and evenly. Aunt Pearl looked at her watch. We better go. I have work tomorrow. I'll drive you home, said Jeff. That's real nice, but... No, I'd like to, Aunt Pearl. It would give me a chance to talk with Alfred some more. By the time they dragged the girls from upstairs and thanked each other for the 3rd time, it was past 11 o'clock. Aunt Pearl, Charlene, and the twins piled in the back of Jeff's old Ford and fell asleep almost as soon as the car started moving. Were you serious about finishing high school? Not until I said it tonight. I'm going to try. You've changed a lot, said Jeff. Okay. Jeff stared out the windshield at tiny flakes of snow, caught swirling in the glare of the headlights. Well, you always seem so negative. What do you mean? You sort of seem to, if you don't mind my saying so, seem to just drift along. Yeah, sweet old Uncle Alfred. Sorry, Alfred, I didn't hear what you said. I guess I had no ideas about anything. What I wanted to do, anything like that. Didn't seem like any reason to stay in school. And I wasn't doing good, but Spoon says... The teacher. Right. He used to box. He said if you can concentrate on learning to box, you can concentrate on learning anything. Yeah, that makes sense. You were talking before about things in this country instead of Africa. Like what? For one thing, a lot of groups are trying to organize self-help programs in the black communities. Parents groups, tenants groups, recreation centers for young kids. Very important. White people have always run these centers, and they don't always understand the problems. Black children need to look up to black adults. They're working on that around our neighborhood. You'd be a natural for something like that, said Jeff. You have all the athletic background. You really think so? Sure of it. Aunt Pearl stirred and leaned forward. Better turn here, Jeff. He squinted through the frosty windshield and guided the car smoothly to the curb. Here we are! Aunt Pearl and the girls kissed him and sleepily climbed out. Jeff shook Alfred's hand. I'll be back for Christmas. See you then? Sure. Maybe you'll come up to the gym. I'd like that. Take it easy, Jeff. The car pulled away and Alfred pushed the twins toward the stoop. They whimpered in the cold and began to wake up. You two really got on tonight, said Aunt Pearl. I never saw you talk so much, Alfred. They started up to the stoop. A shuddering old man crouched alongside the stairs, behind a garbage pail. Poor old wino, thought Alfred. He opened the front door. The huddled figure moved, and Alfred suddenly felt sick. I'll be right up, Aunt Pearl. I dropped something. You'll catch cold, Alfred, she said. The girls started whining. She herded them inside. Alfred moved carefully down the snow-slick stoop and around the side. The lowered head came up. I'm waiting on you, Alfred. I nearly didn't know you, James. You look so bad. You gotta help me. Come on upstairs with me. I'll get you some. No. His sunken eyes were very bright and feverish. James shivered inside a torn overcoat. Loan me some money. Hot food, James. Come on. He grabbed at the overcoat, but James pulled away. I need money! For a fix? That won't do you no good. I'm gonna quit, Alfred, but I need one more. Just one more. And after that, come on, James. Come on up. Money. Alfred fumbled in his wallet. He had $6 bills. A claw-like hand snatched them. James, wait. Please, But James is weaving down the street, almost running. Alfred watched him until he disappeared around the corner. I should have dragged him up, he thought. What's gonna happen to him now?
I'm going through a drought. You don't even have to do too much.